Before I run through Bisping's rant, I want to replay a short segment from my last video. It's just kind of funny when you consider it was uploaded only a few hours before Bisping posted his tirade on Instagram. As I mentioned, I actually agree with his point about taking a beating from Hendo and not wanting a short camp to take on someone at Jacare's caliber. But in terms of the shitstorm he's getting, he did that to himself by picking on a bunch of fucking welterweights who hadn't won a fight in 3 years, while a queue of absolute fucking savages tried to sort themselves out. Regardless of whether or not he's being sincere, that's just a bit much for some people to swallow. Well, it looks like people have found it difficult to swallow, because Bisping's been getting so much shit that he wrote the following. Now, I'm going to read the whole thing because I want to discuss it at length, but I'll try and run through it quickly so I don't bore the fuck out of you. Here's a random picture of my foot. Interested to see all of the negative comments that come from the sad twats that seem to comment on my Instagram pics. Here's the facts, you losers, and I apologize for any foul language. Get a life. Man, I actually feel sorry for you. Why even follow me to talk shit? Occasionally I look at some of your profiles. Wow, please stop. I don't respond because I actually feel sorry for you, because you are some of the saddest looking virgin assholes I've ever seen. Anyway, I'm going back to chilling in my massive house with my beautiful children and wife, with my UFC world belt staring at me right now. Regardless of anything you can say, I'm ridiculously happy. Can any of you spiteful people say that? No. Otherwise, you jealous assholes wouldn't spend your time hating on Instagram. Meanwhile, I hope you find something at the job center. A job, a girlfriend, or maybe just a sense of purpose and happiness. God knows your life is lacking if this is how you like to spend your free time. Find something useful to do. Add to the world. Be happy and spread love. Oh, and in the meantime, go fuck yourself. And you know what's really funny? All of you dicks would beg me for a picture if you met me. Now that's funny. So obviously Bisping was getting hammered online. The dam finally broke and he snapped back with that Instagram post. Okay, I can see where he's coming from, but I just read an article that was titled Michael Bisping, with arguably the greatest response to trolls since the invention of the internet. Fox Sports referred to it as an epic post. Like, what the fuck are these guys talking about? I mean, if people are slinging insults like, I fucking your mom, then of course Bisping is entitled to respond to that type of nonsense. Fuck those assholes. But this guy, come on, greatest response ever? All Bisping really did here was cobble together every tired cliche every celebrity has ever used to dismiss criticism. I mean, he hits almost every single note. Get a life, I feel sorry for you, I'm the champion, you're a bunch of losers, if you were happy you wouldn't be hating. The post is like a collage of snippets from celebrity meltdowns. My wife is beautiful, you're a bunch of virgins, I'm rich, you're poor, get a girlfriend, if you met me you'd want my picture. Like, if you taught a monkey how to copy and paste and gave him access to Twitter, he could have constructed that post from previous celebrity meltdowns. So, greatest response ever? I don't know. Let's just say I disagree with that headline. What Bisping has essentially done is characterize anyone who criticizes him as some kind of irrational and pathetic, pussy-starved, jealousy-driven hater. By doing that, he can essentially dismiss all the criticism at once without actually having to answer any of the legitimate questions people are currently asking. Now, a lot of the comments are just hate, but let's not throw the baby out with the fucking bathwater. Let's take a look at some of the legitimate criticism and try to work out what's really going on here. But before I make the case that not everyone who disagrees with Bisping is a sexually frustrated, mongoloid half-wit, I want to comment on one of the more bizarre aspects of Bisping's career. Over the course of more than a decade in the UFC, Bisping's popularity has experienced more definitive ups and downs than any other fighter I can think of. Like, his popularity has yo-yoed like a motherfucker. He's gone from being a huge fan favorite to getting booed by the crowd several times. Bisping first emerged on The Ultimate Fighter Season 3. He was arguably the most popular fighter from the season, which he eventually won and became the face of MMA in the UK. Now, you can never please every asshole, but coming out of The Ultimate Fighter, Bisping was enormously popular. In 2008, he got voted the coolest man in Britain, beating out several other cool customers like Jason Statham and Christian Bale. I mean, Christian Bale played Batman that year, so Bisping's stock could not have been higher. This popularity did experience a couple of ups and downs. I mean, I was at UFC 75 in London, where the home crowd largely booed his decision win over Matt Hamill. But overall, Bisping remained popular right up until The Ultimate Fighter Season 9, which he coached opposite Dan Henderson. I think Bisping kinda got caught up in trying to be entertaining. We've seen it many times, coaches and fighters self-destruct by playing up to the cameras. The problem was that he was facing one of the most stoic and understated legends in the sport's history. So rather than getting into an entertaining back and forth, like Rampage and Rashad, people perceived Bisping as a bit of a loudmouth and a bit of a bully. I mean, the narrative that developed on the show was almost like something out of an old western, with Bisping being the brash antagonist, while Hendo took on the role of the more silent Clint Eastwood type character, a man of few words who did all of his talking with his fucking fists. The net result of the whole thing was that going into UFC 100, the vast majority of fans wanted Hendo to shut Bisping up. Well, Hendo went in there and delivered possibly the most iconic KO in UFC history. I mean, it was brutal. It looked like if Hendo had landed one or two hammer fists, he'd have been facing homicide charges. They'd have been sealing off the octagon and doing a chalk outline of the body on the canvas. And that was exactly the conclusion people were looking for. The Bisping photoshops were absolutely rampant. The fact that the build-up was so drawn out on a show where Bisping was universally framed as the heel, and the conclusion was just so emphatic, it just decimated Bisping's image among the fans. That was easily the low point of Bisping's popularity. He got absolutely fucking smashed in the most devastating manner. But because of his attitude on The Ultimate Fighter, fans just didn't appear to have any real compassion for the fact that the guy was dealing with an absolutely crushing loss on the biggest stage ever. They happily reveled in his demise. Over the next couple of years, the roasting gradually faded. Bisping's public image recovered slowly, and he wasn't really in the limelight as much. He did have a solid stint on The Ultimate Fighter opposite Mayhem, and his fight with Chael got a ton of coverage, but he became somewhat of a win-some, lose-some fighter. And I may be wrong, but I feel like he wasn't in the headlines quite as much during that rocky stretch. But one interesting thing that happened to Bisping in that period is that his personality and his abilities on the mic seemed to undergo a complete transformation. Like, Bisping could always sell a fight. He was always a big personality in the UFC. But lately, his interviews are for the most part pure fucking gold. The guy's hilarious. He's very quick-witted and just a superb off-the-cuff trash talker who's also a super entertaining media personality. He became very funny, at times very concise, and even pretty humble. By the time Bisping was heading into the Rockhold fight, the tides had turned big time. Heading into that fight, he had everything going for him. His interviews and press conferences were brilliant. He was taking a short-notice fight where he was a huge underdog. The champion was a fighter who, let's be honest, isn't the most popular guy in the world. Additionally, his latest streak is basically a career resurgence, and I'm not sure why. I think it taps into the same thing that makes people root for the underdog, but people love a career resurgence. I mean, people will root for a fighter having a career resurgence, even if they didn't particularly like the fighter during their earlier career. The best example for me is Robbie Lawler. Like, I always liked Robbie's style, but I would have never considered myself a huge fan. He returned to the UFC in 2013, having previously slugged away in the UFC, Pride, and eventually Strikeforce, where he'd fallen on pretty hard times and looked like he was on his way out of the sport. But when he started disfiguring motherfuckers in the UFC, I just did not want to see him lose. There's just that element of having paid their fucking dues. You know, persevered through the ups and downs, been signed, been released, dealt with injuries, had opponents pull out, been rocked, knocked down, knocked out, gotten submitted, but never gave up trying to be the best motherfucker in the world. There's just something about watching that guy finally get to the pinnacle of the sport that makes you root for them. It's like, good for you. You deserve it. You deserve it more than the next man. And that to me pretty much summed up the feeling around Bisping after his amazing win over Rockhold. I imagined the end to Bisping's career was going to be an unexpected and incredible high, where despite the ups and downs, he was going to go out as an almost universally loved fan favorite. Unfortunately, as a Bisping fan, almost everything he's said or done since winning the belt has been increasingly difficult to defend. His attitude with regards to opposition has done a complete 180. I mean, he went from jumping off the couch on short notice to fight an absolute savage for the belt, to defending against the number 14 ranked middleweight, to then trying to goad an unranked welterweight into a fight at UFC 206, to then turning down a legit middleweight contender for that very same event. His latest statement is that if Yoel beats Weidman, he won't give Yoel a shot because of the steroid fiasco. Whether or not you agree with him on that, it just feeds into the growing perception of Bisping as someone who, more so than any other champion, is cherry-picking opponents. Rather than representing the best fighter in the world, Bisping is treating the belt like it's a malfunctioning ATM, where he's just trying to grab as much cash as he can and see what he can get away with. Now, I am a Bisping fan. That's obvious from any of my previous videos. So, if he just wants to make as much money as possible, I hope he does. I hope he makes millions and retires very rich. But don't expect people not to be able to see what's actually going on here. The media might gobble this up and put a positive spin on it, but any rational fan is gonna be able to see through the fucking bullshit. But what do I know? I'm probably just a virgin asshole jealous of his beautiful children.